Name is Miss Pure, founder of the Neurodivergent Gift. And we all know that April is Autism Awareness Month. And in partnership with Ausome Society, we have stepped into having conversations, really conversations for this month of April, sharing our experiences, talking with people that we've walked this journey with. All in the hopes of really passing on insights, learnings that help us navigate this world as parents of neurodivergent and or autistic kids. So in the conversations this month, we're really talking around the therapies that our kids really need to step into. What does that process look like? What should I be thinking about? What should I be asking? We're talking about the education system. Eventually our kids have to step into the schooling world. And what does that mean? What does that look like when I'm now looking for a school? And then today, I want to step into a conversation with one of my favorite teachers that I've just really encountered in my journey as a mom to an autistic kid. Really, when I say one of my favorite teachers, favorite because not that she did anything out of the ordinary in what I would have assumed teachers really do, but I learned along the way that teachers who really walk in their vocation, teachers who really walk in the mandates that they've been given are currently few and far between. But then also when you add the aspect of just your neurodivergent kid into the mix, as an actual parent, it is one of those blessings that my family and I came across. So today I'm in conversation with Natasha. And she was my child's teacher for a good 2 years back when he was 3, 4, 4, 5, there, 4, 5, when he was really 4, 5. And the journey that we traveled and the things that we discovered together. And really today, I'm happy for us to use our experience as the point of sharing our learnings, our journey. But I also really want to hear from her side as a teacher who I would like to think we probably threw her in the deep end in, well, here's the child, and these are the things that we are now walking in. How then did she also just navigate that space, and what did it mean for her? And the purpose of us sharing this story is really from sharing that story. And hopefully, in the story that we share, in the experiences that we share, we're able to help at least one other parent or caregiver have a better starting point on what they are thinking, how they're engaged with teachers, and also put ourselves in the teacher's shoes. What is it that they're experiencing, and how then do we work together? So, Tash, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Who are you? Why are you a teacher? Why do you continue to do this job?
So my name's Natasha. I've been teaching for now 10 years, the age 2 to 3 and 3 to 4s. Um, and why I teach, it's because it's my calling. It is something, it's not a job. It is something that I wake up every morning excited for. It is
Yeah.
something that is my heart calls every single day to. And when you see the development in the children and the growth in the children as the days and the weeks and the months go by, you can see the fruitfulness of your effort and your love growing within them. And for me, that is the biggest pleasure I can ever experience in my life is we are creating the foundation of the children's schooling career. We are creating the foundation of who they are as an individual. We are creating the foundation of their personalities, of their values, their morals, everything. This is the basic starting point. And from here, everything is just building blocks and it just builds on top. And with a good foundation, they will be extraordinary people. And so that for me is why I absolutely love teaching. We don't see the benefits of our work now in the children, but when we see them 7, 8 years down the line and you see who they become, then you can see all your hard work and your love and your compassion and everything that you've poured into them, you can see the fruits growing there. So that is exactly why I teach. It is a passion, it is a calling, and it is 100% where my heart is the happiest.
Thanks, Tish. I think, early child development is such an important thing because that foundation. And as a parent, one of the most difficult things for me was wrapping my mind around what will early child development look like for my child, because all of a sudden I'm no longer dealing with a textbook that I have come to know, whether through myself and how I went through school, or watching other people who've had kids before me and watching them how they do in preschool and the things that they learn and just the milestones that they're meant to be hitting. And now all of a sudden, I'm in a position where I have a neurodivergent child who is not going to do things in the way and in the expected way that everyone else is. And as a parent, I think that was the biggest thing for me in the sense of understanding how will we navigate this space. So I know that when we started in your class, one of the things that my husband and I did was always creating a team around our child and always having the team talk to each other. So the teacher, the speech therapist, the OT, the music therapist, the head of department, everyone talking together. But I want to know what went through your mind, or what were the emotions and just the thoughts that you had when all of a sudden we pulled you into this meeting. We had the speech therapist there, we had the OT there, saying all these big words around this child and who he is, and how now we are now trying to create this world for him in a world that currently already exists. I want to know your emotions and just your thinking in now being asked to do something different from what you've come to know.
So for me as a teacher, I think that saying where it says it's a community that raises the children is exactly what it is. You need a community to raise a child, and every child is different, whether they're neurodivergent or not. Every child learns differently. Every child processes differently, and I think that's where teaching now has changed and is starting to develop in a different way, is to identify and see that every child is not put into a box. Like when we were at school, we were all put into a box. You all had to do so these certain expectations, you had these certain outcomes, you had to learn these certain ways. And not everyone is like that anymore. And especially as early educators, we need to realize that children are very different in the way that they learn, in the way that they process, in the way that they express themselves. And coming into these meetings, it gives you that say a form of security because you know you're not alone. Um, and we do not know everything and we cannot know everything, but I can know from an educational perspective that OT knows from an OT perspective, the speech knows from a speech perspective. And when everyone gives their little bit of input, it builds the bigger picture and one can understand and work better when you have the full picture in view. And I think working as a team and working as a community is absolutely vital and it is necessary for, especially for the child. Um, but it's also important for everyone involved because how one child with how the child is with one person might not necessarily be how he is with another person. So you will see different personalities come through with the different teachers or different um, professions, and to hear and see how the child acts differently amongst each other, it gives us a holistic view of the child. So coming in, it was a bit daunting and overwhelming in the beginning, but when you see that we are all there for the same purpose, we're all there with for the same, we want the same outcome. Then you kind of connect like a puzzle to build the beautiful picture and to help the child in the best way that we can.
Yeah. So on this topic then of that community, what then would you ask parents to do or know in order to create the environment that is needed for the development of their child?
I think the biggest thing is to try and have an open mind. I think, and especially me as a parent with a child that has learning difficulties, um, you want to also not believe that your child is different. So you want to believe that your child is the same as everybody else. And to hear that your child is not like that, in the beginning, it's a very hard pill to swallow. And I think as difficult as that pill might be to swallow, to try and have an open mind, I think is the most important thing because once you have an open mind and you're able to explore and to see different techniques that work best for the child, and then you will see the child blossoming, then it gives the mom or the parents a warm feeling in their hearts. Um, so yeah, I think my biggest recommendation was to try. It's not always easy to have an open mind.
Okay, thanks, Tash. And then once then the conversations had happened, everyone kind of knows what role they play in this puzzle that we're trying to build for this child. Then you step into your classroom. What did you then have to look at and figure out this some things need to change, and what were those things that you needed to change or adapt in your classroom to then make sure that you are still giving my child what he needed in that space with what you had, so understanding your limitations and capacity, but also carrying the rest of the class, because we can't we always have to remember that yes, my child may need XYZ, but there's still 14 other kids in this class who are also here, also with their own different things, or all 14 are neurotypical and it's just the one who's a neurodiverse. So what did you have to then think about when it came to what your classroom then looked like and how you did your days?
So from the beginning of when I started teaching to now, I've actually seen a lot of changing in children and you becoming aware that everyone is actually needing a different way to learn and a different way to process things. And with your little boy, he didn't learn in the same way as others. And so I had to figure out what worked for him and how I could incorporate that with working with the others. And creating a safe space for him because once he felt safe and once he felt loved, he was able to absorb. If he didn't feel those things, he wouldn't have been able to absorb any form of information. And even if I was teaching the rest of the children something, and he would be in his little quiet area in his corner playing with his cars or paging through a book. The ear was always open to listening to what I said. And so, not forcing him to sit with the rest of us and to participate with the rest of us, and giving him the freedom to navigate in the classroom how he wanted to allowed him to do that while still listening and processing what was said without having to make him sit with us. Because I believe that if he sat with us and I forced him to be in a position where he felt uncomfortable, he would have switched off and no learning would have happened. And I think giving him that freedom and giving him that safety allowed him to do his learning in his way.
Yeah.
And then as you slowly get to understand the child and understand how he likes things to be done and how he likes to learn, then one little by little, when everyone is busy with a different activity, you can sit with him and do it in a different way. And so you just, I just had to learn what worked for him.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I remember you doing was there was a time when he would be, if he was overstimulated in whatever that was going on. And I think one of the things that my boy is very clear about, he's very clear about his boundaries. He's very clear around, I no longer want to be here. He's very clear around, I will engage or I will not engage. It's very clear about those things. And one of the things that I always appreciated in what you did, because it was one of the stress points for me, is that the schooling system isn't changing as rapidly as our kids are actually coming up, and more kids are showing up as neurodiverse. And one of the things that I was really always stressed about is this thing of kids having to sit still, because we always have this vision of by the time they get to grade one, they need to be sitting still and sitting through a full day of just classes and teaching and all of that. And at that time, one of the things that we allowed him to do, and what you allowed him to do, was going out to the sandpit when he was overstimulated and leaving him be. And what I want to say is that that little thing that you did of letting him go out into the sandpit and leaving him be, and then over the time, then he would move closer and closer to the classroom, and then ultimately he was in the classroom but in his corner. When I think of him now in grade R, he sits the whole day because his body was given the opportunity at the time to move in the way that it needed to move as a 4-year old, as a child who actually was also still trying to figure himself out in his own body. But now, where he is now, he actually is able to sit. And it's just those things for me, which sometimes I feel that as parents and how we engage with our teachers and things that we ask of our schools and teachers, let us ask those things. Can he be given a little tent in the corner of the class so that he's able to go sit there when it's too much? But like you're saying, but his ear was always in the class and he was actually always learning, and 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 he was still gaining the knowledge that he needed to gain. How though did you manage the other kids in class who were just like, okay, but why is he able to do that? And why am I not able to do that? So, what was the conversation that you were creating of allowing our kids to see each other as individuals who have different ways of moving through life? But it doesn't mean that they were scapegoating, like you were not necessarily being lenient on that one and then strict on this one. So how did you balance that? And because 4-year-olds are going to ask.
Yeah, and they like to push boundaries and they like to test. Um, so for us, we always had conversations that God made us different. None of us are the same. And every one of us learns differently. Every one of us processes differently. Every one of us needs different things. And luckily for us, we had a few other children in the school that had learning barriers, whether they were physical, whether they were mentally, there were some sort of barriers. And so these children were exposed to children that had learning barriers. And so it gave that opportunity to have that kind of conversation that we are not all the same. We cannot all be taught the same. We cannot all learn the same. And when your little boy went to the sandpit and needed his little time out. And everyone was, how come he can do it, but we can't? I said, but he's not you. He's different to you, and you're different to him. So the way we treat him is not the way we treat you, and the way we treat you is not the same way we treat him. We treat each other as individuals. We don't even treat each other as one. So even each child without a neurodivergency, they all get treated in their own individuality. So I think our school community, because of the children we had around us and were exposed to, it gave that floor to have these open conversations and for the children to physically see that not all of us are the same and we are all different, and some of us can do certain things and some of us can't, and it's okay. We are not ridiculed to all be perfect in all areas of learning. And so it was a learning experience for them as well as it was for us. And what amazed me is that none of them ever teased, or none of them ever said anything nasty or made fun. It was they were all very humble, they were all very loving, and they were all very, um, they looked after him. So, like, if he was not having a good time and he ran out the classroom without me or the assistant knowing, they would let us know because they were keeping an eye on him as well. So, they had each other's backs. And at the age of 4, for me, that's something beautiful. There was no judgment. There was no stereotypical connotation to anything. Everyone just loved each other for who they were. So they didn't need a lot of conversation to say, but we are all different, because they actually accepted that. And they did it with a lot of love, and they did it with an open heart. And there was not a lot of times where they said, but why can they and I cannot? Because they understood and they could see it, that we were all different. And I even gave example as adults how we are different, and how we learn differently, and how we teach differently, and how we speak and walk differently. So they were able to, once they can see it with their eyes, I think it was easier for the processing to happen. Um, but yeah, we were blessed with beautiful children that were very loving, very humble, and very open to each other and to the different learning environments that we created for each child.
You know, something very important in what you're saying is that when we create a world of diversity and inclusivity from as early as within that early child development space, and you're talking about how your world as an educator, where you're catching them at that time, creates the foundation for the rest of their schooling world. But actually, what we create from the environment also creates the foundation in how they see the world and in how they engage with everyone. So, and it is one of the things I've always been so thankful for. And I've always just been so thankful of how God just writes the stories of our lives without us even realizing it until we're in that position. Because as a parent to a neurodiverse kid, one of the biggest heavy rocks that you carry in life is, how will this world actually receive my child? How will they receive my child? How will my child receive the world? How will they function in the world? And so to be in a school where you can physically see with your eyes a representation of the world, it may not be the full representation, but it's a representation of the world because my educators look like the world. The kids I play with look like the world. So the conversations, like you're saying, we then were given the opportunity to have the conversations because it's sitting right in front of you. So you're able to ask the question and we're able to answer it. And for me, I think that's one of the biggest things which I advocate for, especially in this journey of just the education system, the society that we're building, is, are we really creating the environment for our kids in the early spaces where they are seeing this is what the real world actually looks like and not the bubbles? Because then, like you're saying, there was no bullying, there was no
No.
judgment, because for them, this is the world. So there's nothing different, there's nothing odd here. This is the world. And therefore, in the world, we then also protect each other. We look out for each other. So it's just one of the things which has always been, for me, my biggest point of thank you to God and how He orchestrates our lives to give us the thing that we need before we even realize that we actually need it. So then I want to then jump into the space of, so our boy then was with you for 2 years. So what we learned about our child. So he hasn't done it in the last 18 months. So I don't know if it's if he was just testing our wills back then to where he is now. But he always seemed to he always used to just like shoot up in his development, and then he'll just plateau. And he'll plateau so quietly, and we just wouldn't know what is going on. And all the tests that we will do, nothing will ever show up that there's something actually wrong. And I think one of the biggest then conversations we were having at the time is he in the right school? Or should we keep him back another year? Should he repeat that year? And I remember it being like such a difficult conversation because you don't know if you're making the right decision or not. You don't know if the outcome of this is going to go in the direction that you hope. And so we made the decision to keep him in your class for another year. And I want to know from your perspective, that journey of getting to that decision from a teacher's point of view to keeping him in the class for another year. So repeating, which means then he then loses the friends that he would have built in when he started when he was 2 years old and moving with everyone, and now all of a sudden now he's losing them, and now they're all going ahead. And I'll say lose in inverted commas because everyone plays in the same playground, so we still see each other, but we're not in the same class. And then also having then to it's a new group of kids now who are now going to be joining him, who haven't had the conversation that you've now had with the class that's now leaving. So all of a sudden there's now that mixture that's going on in there. So, in that process of getting to that decision, so the conversations that we were having, and then keeping him in the class for that second year, what was your experience and just your thoughts and your emotions from it? And yeah, your biggest learning in it?
So for me, I think with your little one, the first year was all about creating his safe space, creating that area where he felt comfortable, where he felt loved, and where he felt he could be himself. And like you mentioned, he first went from the sand pit and then he started moving closer and closer. And by the end of the year, even the next year, he was in the classroom. If we had pushed him through to the next grade, I believe he would have gone regressed and then had to do that all again because it was a new environment, a
Yeah.
new educator, a new classroom. And so that safety net that he was building was then taken away from him. And because I think that first year we sat building that net for him and building that area for him, the second year allowed for the academic to grow and for the academic to be processed and for that area to flourish. I think the first year it was all about the safety and the emotional and him knowing that he's loved, knowing that he's accepted, knowing that he's always got someone there to be there for him, to protect him, to guide him, to support him, to comfort him, knowing that he's never alone. That is what we built in the first year. And it might academically not have seemed fruitful, but when you see the fruitfulness coming out in the second year with all the academic growth because of the first year being developed, then you see the fruit bearing on the second year. And so I think even though there was no tangible evidence, really, if we can say that, in the first year, I think it was the most vital um, year for him because it was his developing stage. It was where he was growing. It was where he was understanding who he is and understanding his emotions and understanding how he needs to communicate and how to be involved with the world and how he needs to interact with others. He was learning about himself as much as we were learning about him. And I think that is why that first year was so important because it gave him that opportunity to develop. It gave him that opportunity to grow and it gave him that security and that safety in order to do all of that. And so in that first year when we had that conversation, I think we were looking at the right thing for him. We thought of his emotional development and we said to him, now that he feels emotionally safe, he's now able to learn academically. And I think we did a very good, we made a good choice by keeping him there back the second year because then it solidified that
Yeah.
foundation.
Yeah. And I think, when I think from our perspective, I can only speak for myself. I can't speak on behalf of my husband. But when I think of the thought process that I know I walked through, I realized also how much we box ourselves as human beings to develop in this life in a specific and certain way, and also forget even for ourselves. Like when you think of us as ladies, by the time you're 30 it should look like this, by the time you're 40 it should look like this. And then when those things don't look the way that we have expected them to look like, we think we're failing, we think something's wrong, we think we haven't fulfilled the lives that we actually are created to. And so that time also even challenged me to even look at what I assume life must look like, what I assume, even for myself, what I assumed I should have done, shouldn't have done by this age. And I realized in just when I had to sit and really, really look at myself and ask myself those questions, I had to ask myself, what is time? Who is in charge of actually saying this is what it's meant to do at the specific time? And I remember having the conversation with my family, because then obviously we are part of a greater family. I've got siblings, they're actual grandparents, and you bring all these people along on this journey because they're also asking what's going on, where are we now, all of that. And I remember having that conversation with them, saying, whoever said that things needed to look like this, that at this age things needed to look like this, at that age it needed to look like this? And I had to realize, like what you're saying, what is best for my child? What does he need that is going to allow him to actually flourish? And at that time, what he needed was a detour. And the detour was just to stay where he was. And and from a teacher's point of view, what do you want to say to parents when we speak about rate of development, and how should they be looking at it and viewing it in order to make the right, or the not even the right, make the best decisions for their kids?
I think, again, it's an open mind. You need to
Mm.
understand and realize that children do not develop in the same way. Children do not grow in the same way. And just like all these milestones, you have to be crawling by 6 months, you have to be walking by a year, you have to be doing this by this age and this by this age. If the child doesn't do that at that age, are you telling me that there's something wrong? Not always.
Yeah.
For me, it's how they develop, it's how they are growing, it's how they are processing things. And even now in my position now, I'm teaching the younger ones, the 2 to 3 year olds, and I've got some that are slightly older, and the developments are not always the same.
Yeah.
Yet they are developing in their own time, in their own way. And if you look at the child holistically, you can
Mm.
see that they are developing and growing, whether they are to society's norms, that's a different story. But if you look at how the child was from the beginning of the year to the middle of the year to the end of the year, and you see their development happening, you can see that there is growth. You can see that there's maturing happening. You can see that the development. It's not a standardized test where now this child needs to be at this, and this point, at this and this time, because we are not the same.
Yeah.
Every single child
Yeah.
is different, and every single child grows differently. And for example, we have a little one that's 4 years old and still in nappies, and everyone says, but that's wrong. It shouldn't be like that, that it's not, they should be out of nappies. And I said, but he's still developing in his time and in his space. As an adult, do we see adults in nappies? No. So eventually he will grow
He
out of it,
will.
but he
Mm.
needs his time and his space, and we need to give him that opportunity to grow and to develop. If we start putting pressure on him and start to force him to do something where he's not ready to, that is when they kind of pull back and they will go into a little
Mm.
shell and regress, and then you have even more delayed development. So I believe that with parents and even educators, it's not a standardized test where everyone has to be at the same place at the same time, because God made us different.
Yeah.
He made us all unique, and he didn't tell us we all have to be learning the same way. We all have to know the same things in the same time, and we need to be able to give children the freedom to a certain point to develop in the time frame that they need to do it.
Yeah. And you mentioned the child developed holistically. What does it look like holistically? Because sometimes I think we zoned in on a specific point and then we obsess about it and then we say there's a failure here and we don't realize that this child is a full human being and they're doing other things and we are not qualifying those because we're so focused on this thing. And I think that's one of been the biggest lessons that I know that you afforded me as a parent when you challenged my thinking. Because when we looked at that report and it was filled with NA, 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 it makes a parent's heart drop because you just like they're not doing this. This is like you're saying that report is like a standardized test. We all understand the reason and purposes of the report, but when you help me see that the report is a marker for us, it isn't the be all end all. It is our guide. But also, should we not be looking at the report and thinking, how can we change it for us to see the holistic development of our child and not, can he hold a pencil? He may not be able to hold a pencil, right? But heck, this child actually knows how to cut. He holds the scissors though, right? And so we're so focused on the pencil, we're missing the scissors. Or that he may not be able to probably jump at a certain height, but wait, he now walks down the stairs without actually holding onto the rails or walking with his bum like the rest. So just looking at it holistically. And what I learned also is that sometimes our kids are developing and coming from different points. In wrapping up our chat, Tash, I think I want to know, what have you learned in this journey?
So, what I've learned was that not everyone is the same. Not everyone learns the same, and not everyone processes information the same. And it helped me in my current role because we have children of different development stages. We have children from different cultures. We have children from different countries, and they all come together, and we need to be able to educate them with the assessments that we need to then fulfill, or the outcomes that we need to achieve. And so then you look at each child, and each child has a different background, each child has a different upbringing, each child has a different need, and each child is at a different stage of development. And what all of this has taught me is that you cannot teach how we were taught at school. Stand in the front of the class and speak and expect everybody to learn in the same way. And I think that is where education, and I see it worldwide changing, is it becoming more rejo, more inquiry-based thinking, inquiry-based learning. It's changing the whole way of teaching. It's changing the perception of how teaching should be done. It's no longer a teacher stands and gives information and children has to learn. And it's giving the opportunity to see that each child is different. Each child is at a different stage. And teachers need to now find a way to reach each child in their own development stages and understand that you are not going to get the whole class to be in the same place because we are not all the same. And in a class of 13, 15, 18 children, you are going to have some children that are stronger in one area, more developed in one area, but perhaps will be less developed in a different area. And then other children might be vice versa. And so, as educators, we now need to come up with ideas and ways to incorporate teaching to reach the levels of each child at their own place and at their own space. And so that is what has helped me and has given me the experience is seeing that every child is different. Every child's develop stages are different, and each child's learning techniques are different. And as a teacher, we need to understand our children. It's not, we need to have build a relationship with our children so we can understand them, because once we understand them, we can know how to reach their potentials, or how they can reach their potentials. Without understanding them, we will never be able to know how to teach them. And so, as educators, I think we need to not just look at the academics and throw academics at children. We need to look at their hearts too. And this word, I love the word holistically. The child is an holistic being. We cannot just focus on academics and expect them to be good at academics, but then their social and emotional part is falling behind. We need to take the whole child as a whole and look at it as a whole and work at it as a whole. And then you'll be able to achieve your best outcomes. And I think that is what your boy has taught me, is that we're all different. We all learn differently, and we all process things differently. And it gave me that freedom to experiment and to work. And some things are going to work, and some things you're going to try and say, oh my goodness, that was a complete fail. Now, no, next time not to do it that way. And then you will find a way that works with a specific child, and you're like, fantastic, great. Now I know how I can reach that child. And so there's a lot of experimenting that happens with the educator and the child, and finding the way that they learn and the way that they process. And I think that's what your boy gave me, was the patience and the understanding to, and the space to also experiment and see what works for one might not be the same for another. And you need to see what works for each child. And I think that has been my biggest experience.
Thanks, Tash. I mean, yeah, no, that child is teaching all of us. I think one of the things that he teaches me is advocacy, because he advocates so well for himself, something that I never taught him, but I just the way that he was created, he is very clear about who he is. He's very clear about his boundaries. He's very clear about what it is that he wants, but he's also very open to trying. I think we're at a space now where we are trying food, and I'll say to him, just give it a try, and he'll try it. And that balance of advocacy, of knowing who you are and where you start and stop, and where the next person starts and stops, but also being open to trying, being open to learning something new. So that's something he's taught me. And I think that is something that neurodiverse individuals can teach us, can teach the world, is that just because it's been done like this doesn't mean that it should always look like this, or doesn't necessarily mean that it's always right. Because, like you've said, we are all created different. And how do we create a world that recognizes differences and then builds the environment that it needs for all the differences to work well together, to encourage each other, to protect each other, and to thrive also as those individuals in society? So thank you, Tash. Thank you for your time.
Okay.
I want to thank you for your heart that carried my boy for 2 years. And because of how you carried my boy for 2 years, he is thriving. The foundation that you laid within him, and specifically around the emotional safety that you created within him, and how then now he is just thriving and flourishing within the school, and how all the other educators are seeing those fruits, and everyone has their account of when I first received him, he was like this, and now look at him now. And so thank you. I want to thank you for continuing this work. It is not easy work. I know that I was never created to be a teacher. I know that I would have failed dismally at this job, at this job. And so I want to thank you. I want to thank you for being persistent in it, in being persistent in understanding that it isn't just something that you pulled out of a hat, but it's something that you were called to. And I want to just encourage you by thanking you for doing what you did. And that I pray that God continues to fill your cup every single day, with all the different kids that you receive with every new school year, that you also receive parents who are open. You also receive parents who want to be in partnership with you to make sure that you are part of the community. You're part of it takes a community, it takes a tribe to really rear a child. And so I want to thank you for that. And I really pray and hope that when you do have tough days, you remember the success stories and that keeps you going and that God is going to continue to pour into you and you are going to continue to have him guide you. So thank you, Tash. Thank you for your
No,
time
thank you.
and thank you for your heart.
And so for me, Ole has been a big, big, big part of my life. And as much as now you've said all these wonderful things, for me, he has developed and grown me into a person that I never expected or even thought I would become. And he's made me grow into places and pushed me into areas that I never thought I would go into. And every day I walk into the classroom and I hold Ole into my heart. And he keeps reminding me to not give up. He keeps reminding me to persevere. He keeps reminding me that it's okay. Like he's the one that gives me that every time I feel that little bit of doubt, am I doing it right? Is it going okay? I read the notes that you guys sent me. I look at the picture of the boys and I'm like, yes, I am on the right track. It is because of him, he gave me the confidence to go in the way that I'm going. And so your little boy has given me so much more than I think what you guys also realize. And I carry the both of those boys so deeply in my heart, and I speak so often of them and so highly of them because they are I am just so proud of them. And I'm just so, for me, they're like my children. And for me, they are like my boys. And seeing them flourish and hearing how he's doing, and it gives me such happiness and such warmth, like they're my own boys. It's that comforting, not just in the heart, but in the soul. And so thank you to you and your hubby and to the school for the giving us the space to create the team and to the professionals that we work together. Thank you to all of you for allowing this to happen because I think it taught all of us a lot.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and we all grew from this experience. And
yeah.
so I also just want to say thank you, really,
Thank
really,
you.
from the bottom of my heart and deep in my soul. Thank you.
Thank you, Tash.